A 12-year-old girl saved a commercial airliner from disaster when both pilots lost consciousness. 24 hours later, she received an extraordinary invitation that would change her life forever. What she accomplished in that cockpit left everyone in awe. The morning in Spain was picture-perfect, painted with soft amber skies and the gentle hum of a waking coastal city. It was the final day of the school trip, a week that had felt like magic, woven together with tapas, ancient cathedrals, beachside selfies, and the kind of laughter that only middle school friendships can create. 12-year-old Lily Chen stood quietly near the window of the hotel lobby, her sketchbook tucked under one arm. She barely spoke during the morning flurry of activity. While her classmates scrambled to stuff souvenirs and crumpled clothes into overstuffed suitcases, Lily simply zipped up her neat little bag, her eyes constantly drifting skyward. She was excited, though not for the same reasons as her classmates. Most couldn't wait to show off their trinkets or tell exaggerated stories to friends back home in Seattle. Lily, she just wanted to be at the airport. Airports were her wonderlands. They held the promise of takeoffs, landings, engines rumbling like distant thunder, and the dream of flight made real. She didn't just love airplanes, she understood them. While others marveled at the view from the windows, Lily could explain the difference between a turbofan and a turbojet engine, and why winglets matter at high altitudes. Her fascination was quiet, often unnoticed except by a few teachers who had caught glimpses of her sketching intricate jet engine parts during lunch breaks. As the students boarded the bus bound for Barcelona El Prat Airport, Lily clutched her sketchbook tight. She'd drawn something the night before, a cross-section of an Airbus A350's Trent XW engine, annotated in pencil. She wasn't sure what made her draw it. Just a hunch maybe, but it felt important, like something she needed to understand before they flew home. Their chaperones, Mr. Thompson and Ms. Rodriguez, took a final head count, then waved goodbye to the friendly hotel concierge. The students buzzed with energy, comparing last-minute purchases and trying to sneak in Wi-Fi for one last Instagram update. But Lily, seated by the window of the bus, barely noticed the chatter. She was focused on the sky again, watching the contrails of early morning flights carving delicate streaks across the clouds. At the airport, the excitement amplified. The group navigated through check-in, security, and duty-free shops. Lily hung back, walking slowly, soaking in every engine hum and boarding announcement. When she reached their gate, Flight 783 to Seattle, she leaned against the glass and stared at the aircraft parked outside. It was massive, sleek, powerful. An Airbus A350, just like in her sketches. As the minutes ticked by, something inside her stirred, not fear. She loved flying too much for that. It was something else, a pressure, a thought half-formed. She glanced at her notebook again and traced the sketch with her fingertip. Something about the configuration looked off. But then Ms. Rodriguez called out, "All right, kids. Time to board." And the moment passed like a breeze. There was a strange kind of peace that came with flying at 36,000 feet. The engines hummed in the background like white noise. The overhead air vents whispered cool breaths, and the cabin lights were dimmed to a soft glow. Passengers on Flight 783, bound from Barcelona to Seattle, had settled into the rhythm of a long-haul journey. Some had tucked themselves under scratchy blue airline blankets, heads bobbing with sleep, while others tapped lazily at seatback screens or sipped quietly on small plastic cups of soda and juice. It was the kind of calm that only existed of the clouds, miles away from earthly noise, floating in the in-between. Hours into the flight, nothing felt out of the ordinary. The fasten seatbelt sign had been off for a while, and the cabin crew had completed their rounds. Passengers occasionally murmured requests or stretched their legs, and flight attendants rolled carts of drinks back into the galley. No one suspected a thing. No one imagined that behind the sealed cockpit door, something terrible had just begun. Captain Mitchell had been flying for nearly 25 years. A quiet, steady man with a fondness for jazz and mystery novels. He had thousands of hours of flight time and a reputation for being unflappable. But now, in the cockpit, he was slumped forward, unmoving, his headset dangling slightly off his head, mouth slack, eyes closed. First Officer Jensen turned to him, confused at first. "Captain," he asked. No response. He leaned closer. "Mitchell." He reached out, gently shaking the older man's arm. Still nothing. Panic began to rise in his throat. Jensen activated the autopilot with practiced fingers, then hit the intercom button for the cabin crew. "We need medical assistance in the cockpit," he said, trying to keep his voice level. The call echoed through the cabin. Most passengers barely noticed, assuming someone had gotten airsick, but 2 seats back in row 17, a paramedic named Maya Collins perked up. She looked at her husband, nodded once, and stood. A few rows behind her, a retired ER nurse, Oliver Watson, had already unbuckled his seat belt. They met eyes and moved forward together, led by a pale flight attendant who opened the cockpit door with a key code. Inside the cockpit, the air felt strangely thin. Captain Mitchell was clearly unconscious. His breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. Maya dropped to her knees, checking for a pulse. Oliver grabbed the emergency oxygen mask from overhead and strapped it to the captain's face. "Help me move him," Maya said, voice tight. "We need to start compressions." As the two worked quickly, Jensen tried to keep calm, speaking to air traffic control. His words were slurred. The panel lights blurred together. He rubbed his temples, then his eyes, blinking rapidly. Something was wrong, very wrong. His limbs felt heavy, like they were wrapped in lead. He reached for the oxygen mask. His fingers missed it. Then, just like that, Jensen collapsed, his head hitting the console with a dull thud before sliding to the floor. For a beat, time stopped. Maya and Oliver froze. "Oh God," she whispered. "Not him too." They tried everything. Both pilots were unconscious. The oxygen mask didn't help. The emergency tank didn't help. CPR, adrenaline, nothing worked. The paramedic's brow furrowed as he scanned the cockpit systems. Then he saw it, a small red warning light glowing steadily. "Cockpit oxygen system failure," he read aloud. Maya's eyes widened. That's why they're both down. They didn't even know it was happening. Oliver stood up, wiping sweat from his brow. "We need to get air in here. Get the door open. Circulate cabin oxygen. Maybe that helps, but they're not waking up anytime soon." Back in the cabin, the intercom crackled again. This time, it was the voice of flight attendant Sophia Martinez. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice trembling. "This is an urgent announcement. Both of our flight crew members are currently unresponsive. We have medical professionals attending to them." A ripple of shock passed through the cabin. "They're not flying the plane," someone asked loudly. Sophia continued, trying to calm the storm before it truly began. "We are in contact with ground control. We ask that everyone remain seated. Please do not panic. We will update you as soon as we can." But panic was already blooming. A man stood up, demanding answers. A woman clutched her rosary and began to pray. Children cried. A teenage boy fumbled with his phone, trying to send a message. A businessman pulled out his laptop, his fingers shaking too hard to type. "No one's flying the plane," a woman asked in disbelief. "What do you mean no one's?" Sophia held the intercom button with both hands, her knuckles white. "If there is anyone on board with flight experience, military, commercial, private, please make yourself known to the crew immediately." For a moment, silence. Then a small voice rose from row 9. I study aviation systems." Heads turned. A girl, 12 years old, slim with braids and a blue sweater, stood up. Her name was Lily. Sophia hesitated. "Sweetheart, Do you mean games? Lily nodded but held her ground. Flight simulators, real ones. My aunt works in aerospace engineering. She taught me everything. I've logged hundreds of hours. I know how planes fly. I know the controls. I might not be a pilot, but I think I can help. There was laughter, nervous and reflexive, but Lily didn't flinch. Maya, standing near the cockpit, looked over. Let her through, she said. At this point, any help is help. Sophia bent down to Lily's level. Do you really think you can understand what's in there? I don't know, Lily said honestly, but I want to try. Moments later, Lily stepped into the cockpit. The sight of the unconscious pilots didn't even shake her. She took a deep breath and slid into the co-pilot's chair. Her small hands hovered over the yoke. Okay, she whispered. Let's figure this out. Maya handed her the headset, pushed the button to talk. Lily pressed it. Hello, this is Lily. I'm 12. I'm not a real pilot, but I know simulators. I need help flying this plane. There was a stunned pause. Then a calm voice responded. Lily, this is air traffic control. You're doing just fine. We're going to help you every step of the way. What you're doing is very brave. Lily's fingers danced lightly over the panel. I see we're on autopilot. Heading 3240. Altitude is 36,000 feet. That's exactly right, Lily. You're doing great. Passengers sat frozen, listening to every word. A child was flying the plane. She's just a kid, someone whispered. She might be our only chance, came the reply. Back in the cockpit, Lily focused. What's our fuel situation? Enough to reach the Azores. We're rerouting you there. That's the nearest airstrip. Okay, she said, nodding. Tell me what to do when it's time to descend. For the next hour, Lily remained at the controls, following instructions, keeping the nose level, adjusting small things as guided. You still with me, Lily? The voice asked. Still here, she said, jaw tight. Just concentrating. Oliver placed a hand on her shoulder. You're doing something extraordinary. Lily didn't answer. She was too focused. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. Behind her, the paramedics monitored the pilots. Still unconscious. Maya shook her head. No change. Lily checked the altimeter again. I'm ready to descend when you are. Start now, said the controller. Throttle back gently. Descend to 25,000 feet. Slow and steady. Lily exhaled and began the descent. The aircraft responded like it had been waiting for her. The engines softened. The nose dipped. In the cabin, people clutched their seats. One man began to cry, not from fear, but from the realization that a child was doing what adults could not. Flaps? Lily asked. Not yet. Just focus on your glide path. She followed every instruction, eyes bouncing between instruments and the horizon. Landing gear down, said the voice. Lily reached for the switch. Click. The plane shuddered slightly. You're lined up with the runway. Keep it steady. The lights of the airstrip blinked through the windshield. Final descent. Lily, pull back just a bit. The wheels touched down, hard but clean. The cabin erupted in gasps. The plane bounced once, then rolled smoothly down the runway. Lily cut the throttle. You did it, the voice said in her ear, full of emotion. Lily, you landed the plane. Silence filled the cabin. Then cheers, loud and joyful, broke out. People clapped, sobbed, hugged each other. Lily sat back in the seat, her hands trembling now. She looked over at Maya. I was really scared, she whispered. She smiled. You didn't show it. And for the rest of her life, Lily would carry the memory of that night, of the moment when the world seemed to fall apart at 36,000 feet, and she was the one who kept it in the sky. The news broke like wildfire. It started with a single alert, just one headline blinking across phones in airports and living rooms. 12-year-old girl lands passenger plane after pilots collapse. Within minutes, It was everywhere. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, Fox, and countless others all rolled out their versions. The words differed slightly, but the message was the same. A child had saved 238 people from certain death thousands of feet in the air. The name in every headline, Lily Chen. By mid-morning, the world had fallen in love with her. Footage of the emergency landing played on loop across networks. Blurry cell phone videos from the cabin caught the rising panic as the intercom crackled. The stunned silence when Lily's voice came through, and the roar of relief after touchdown. The story spread fast, and so did the awe. Student hero lands plane. Read the Washington Post. 12-year-old saves 238 lives, echoed the Times. She was trending on every social media platform. Hashtag #LethaPilot hashtag or hero hashtag Flight 783 miracle in her quiet Seattle neighborhood. Things were anything but quiet now. News vans began arriving before dawn. They parked along the curb like satellites orbiting her small gray and white house. Giant satellite dishes rotated on van roofs, and long camera lenses pointed toward her front door. Reporters whispered into microphones, while others tried, politely at first, to knock on the door or flag down her parents for comments. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Some brought coffee or breakfast to Lily's mother, Grace, just to be kind. Others came by to say how proud they were to live on the same block. But inside, Lily was overwhelmed. She sat on the living room couch in sweatpants, knees tucked to her chest, her head resting on her mom's shoulder. The TV was off, the curtains drawn, but she knew, she could feel, the world was looking at her. "Why do they care so much?" she asked softly. Her father, David, looked up from his phone. "Because what you did, honey. People don't expect a kid to save lives. Especially not in the sky." "But I didn't want attention," Lily whispered. "I just wanted to help." "We know," Grace said gently, kissing her forehead. "And that's what makes you special." The doorbell rang again. Another bouquet of flowers from someone who'd seen the news. Another box of chocolates. A handmade card from a classroom in Toronto. A teddy bear wearing pilot goggles arrived with a note for Captain Lily. Lily smiled at that one. At school, things were no less intense. Her middle school held a special assembly the day after she returned. They called it a celebration of courage. A stage was set up in the gym, and every student, teacher, custodian, and staff member crowded in. Banners reading "Welcome Home, Lily," and "Our Hero" hung on the walls. The principal cried during her speech. So did two of Lily's teachers. When Lily was asked to speak, she stood behind the microphone, heart pounding. I didn't do it alone," she began. "I had help. From the air traffic controllers, from the paramedics, from the people who believed in me. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." The crowd erupted in applause. But later, when her friends asked if she'd seen herself on YouTube or TikTok, Lily shook her head. She hadn't watched the landing. She hadn't read the articles. She didn't like the sound of her voice played back, or the way people described her, like a superhero. It didn't feel right. She was just a kid. A kid who had done what she could when no one else could. And then came the envelope. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. The street was unusually quiet for once. The reporters had gone for now. Lily was in her room, sketching a drawing of a cockpit, her pencils arranged neatly beside her. The house smelled like dinner, garlic and butter, and something baking. The doorbell rang, and her father answered. A few minutes later, he appeared at her door, holding something in his hand. A cream-colored envelope, sealed with an embossed gold sticker, the presidential seal. "Lily," he said, his voice unusually soft. "This just came for you." She took it, turning it over in her hands. Her name was written in perfect calligraphy on the front. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and pulled out the card inside. Gold trim framed embossed lettering. The President of the United States requests the honor of your presence at the White House. Lily had seen the White House before, on television, in textbooks, even on the back of coins. But seeing it in real life was like walking into a painting. The plane had landed in Washington, D.C. just after sunrise. The air was brisk, the kind of morning that wakes your senses. As soon as the family stepped off the private jet sent by the federal government, they were greeted by 2 black SUVs and a sharply dressed protocol officer who introduced himself only as Bennett. "No need to worry about anything today," he said warmly. "You just need to be Lily. We've taken care of the rest." Lily clutched the gold-trimmed envelope again. It hadn't left her hand since that day on the porch. It was creased now, a little worn at the corners, but it had become her talisman, her proof that all of this was real. The city rolled past them like a dream. Rows of cherry trees, flags fluttering from every building, monuments she'd only seen in documentaries. She didn't speak much, just stayed out the window in silence as the SUV turned onto Pennsylvania Avenue. And then there it was, the White House, perfect and white as bone, flanked by deep green lawns and guards in dark suits with earpieces. A line of reporters stood behind metal barriers, their cameras already flashing. Some of them shouted her name. Others just held signs. "Welcome Lily, our hero," and one with "From the Sky to History" in bold red letters. Her father took her hand. He'd worn his best suit, though he kept fidgeting with the tie. Her mom was in a navy blue dress, a little too tight because she hadn't had time to shop. Even her little brother Ethan had slicked his hair back, trying to act serious. But all eyes were on Lily. A White House aide met them at the entrance and led them inside. As they walked through the corridors, ornate, carpeted, filled with portraits of presidents, Lily's footsteps grew quieter. She passed busts of Abraham Lincoln and Eleanor Roosevelt. She saw the famous painting of George Washington. It all felt so impossibly large, like a place she was visiting in a dream she wasn't supposed to be in. Then the aide turned to her with a smile. "He's ready for you." The doors to the Oval Office opened. It was smaller than she'd imagined, but impossibly grand at the same time. The rug was deep blue with stars in a circle. Behind the desk stood the President of the United States. He wasn't like he was on TV. He looked taller. Kinder. As soon as she walked in, he stepped forward with his hand outstretched and a genuine smile. "Lily Chen," he said, his voice strong and warm. "The girl who flew a plane." Lily hesitated, then shook his hand. Her own was trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. He knelt a little, so his eyes were level with hers. "You were brave. You were calm. You saved 238 lives. You didn't just act like a hero. You are one." Behind her, the cameras clicked like a hailstorm. But Lily didn't hear them. Her ears were ringing with disbelief. She was invited to sit. So was her family. The president spoke to them like they were old friends, asking about their flight, about Ethan's favorite subject in school, even about Lily's hamster. But the tone shifted when an aide stepped forward and handed him a small velvet-lined box. "Lily," the president said, rising again, "the nation owes you more than gratitude. We owe you recognition, and more importantly, we owe you opportunity." He opened the box. Inside was a medal, round, gold, and shining under the lights. A blue ribbon stretched from either side. The president read from a card. "For bravery in the face of crisis, for composure under unimaginable pressure, and for saving the lives of 238 souls at just 12 years of age, Lily Chen is hereby awarded the National Medal of Honor for Civilian Valor, the highest recognition a civilian may receive from the United States of America." Gasps rippled across the room. A military officer stepped forward and placed the medal around her neck. It was heavy, heavier than she thought it would be. As it settled on her shoulders, she glanced at her parents. Her mother was crying silently. Her father had his hand over his mouth. Ethan clapped, even though no one else was yet. But the moment wasn't over. The president stepped toward the podium. The cameras turned. The broadcast went live. "My fellow Americans," he said, addressing the nation. "Today we honor not just courage, but potential." Lily Chen showed the world what it means to rise above fear, to act with heart and mind under extreme pressure. She reminded us that heroism has no age, no uniform, and no limits. He paused, looked at Lily. "And so it is my great privilege to announce that the United States government will grant Lily Chen a reward of $40 million for her act of bravery." The room burst into noise. Gasps, claps, more flashes. Lily sat frozen. $40 million? She turned to her parents. Her mom had dropped into her seat, openly weeping now. Her father looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. The president continued, calm and proud. "This reward is more than just a number. It is an investment in a future that Lily helped protect. It is a promise that her life will not be limited by circumstance or finance." He held up a second envelope. "Additionally, Lily is being awarded a full academic scholarship to any institution of her choice, anywhere in the world. From Harvard to NASA's flight school, wherever her dreams take her, she will be supported by the gratitude of a nation." A standing ovation erupted from the small group of officials and press allowed in the room. Lily stood slowly, not because anyone asked her to, but because she felt it in her bones. The president extended the scholarship envelope. She reached out and took it with both hands. And then something strange happened. For the first time since the flight, since the cockpit, the frightened passengers, the landing gear that groaned like metal thunder, Lily felt calm. She looked around the Oval Office, at the president, at the faces watching her with awe, at the cameras capturing her every breath, and she realized this was not the end of her story. This was just the beginning. That night, Lily lay in a four-poster bed in the Lincoln bedroom. The walls were covered in antique wallpaper. History echoed in every creak of the floorboards. She clutched the envelope again. The scholarship, the medal still around her neck. Her parents slept nearby, exhausted in the guest quarters. Ethan snored on a velvet couch. But Lily was wide awake. She stared at the ceiling, thinking not about the money, not even about the president, but about the people on that flight. The crying baby, the elderly man who held his wife's hand, the couple on their honeymoon who wrote her afterward to say thank you. And she whispered to herself, "I did something good." She didn't know what came next. Would she become a pilot, an astronaut, an aerospace engineer? All she knew was this. She had been given a future, and she would spend the rest of her life earning it. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear pajamas with a medal hanging from their neck. And sometimes they're only 12. Lily Chen had never imagined that one moment, one decision, would change her entire life. But in the months following the dramatic events aboard Flight 783, that was exactly what had happened. Gone were the quiet mornings in her sunlit Seattle bedroom, filled with books and model airplanes. In their place came TV appearances, interviews, invitations, and headlines that followed her from continent to continent. She had been called a miracle, a prodigy, a national treasure. But to her parents, she was still just Lily. The girl who left her toast half-eaten because she got distracted by clouds. The girl who used to line up her stuffed animals as airplane passengers and fly them using an old hairdryer as an engine. The girl who, when she was 5, once declared at dinner that she was going to fly a plane one day. No one believed her until she actually did. It started with letters, thousands of them. Piles of envelopes stacked high on the dining room table, spilling onto the kitchen counters. Some were from passengers whose lives she had saved. Others came from children who said they wanted to be like her. Many were in languages Lily couldn't read, but she understood their message in full: hope, admiration, and something close to wonder. Then came the speaking requests. The first was the International Aviation Summit in London. It was an exclusive event, one where pilots, engineers, and airline executives gathered to talk about the future of flight. And now they wanted a 12-year-old girl at the podium. Lily was nervous. As she stood backstage, waiting for her name to be called, her hands trembled. Her mom stood beside her, squeezing her shoulder gently. "Just speak from the heart," she whispered. When Lily walked onto the stage, the spotlight hit her face like the sun through a cockpit window. Hundreds of eyes stared back at her, but she didn't flinch. "I'm not here because I planned for any of this," she said into the microphone. "I was scared. I was just a kid on a plane. But when everything went wrong, I remembered what I'd practiced on my flight simulator at home. I remembered that people needed help. So I sat down, took the controls, and tried to do what I knew." There was silence, and then thunderous applause. That moment changed everything. Invitations poured in from Brazil, Japan, Italy, and Canada. People wanted to hear Lily speak. Aviation companies gave her private tours. Universities, even Ivy League ones, wrote her letters expressing their excitement about her future. Reporters followed her from airports to hotel lobbies. The President of the United States had already recognized her, awarded her with a National Medal of Honor, and granted her a $40 million reward along with a full academic scholarship to any institution of her choice. But Lily never let it get to her head. She still packed her own bag, still stayed up late drawing blueprints for her dream airplane, still called her grandmother every Sunday, even if she was halfway around the world. Her book, Sky in Her Hands, began on a notepad by her bed. She would write late into the night, scribbling moments from the flight. The fear she felt, the images burned into her memory. But the book wasn't just about the emergency. It was about what came after. The dreams she had before the flight, the ordinary days that had shaped her, and the message she now wanted to pass on. You don't have to be older, stronger, or taller to do something brave. You just have to believe it's possible. Publishers scrambled for a chance to print it. But Lily insisted on writing it her way. No ghostwriters, no big edits, just her voice telling her story the way it had happened. Honest. Real. Despite the fame, Lily wanted a taste of her old life. So one spring morning, she told her parents something surprising. "I want to visit my old school," she said over breakfast. "Just for a day." Her mom looked up from her coffee. "You sure?" Lily nodded. "I miss it. I miss them." That Friday, she wore sneakers, jeans, and a simple hoodie. No designer clothes, no entourage. Just Lily with a backpack slung over her shoulder and a quiet determination in her step. As she walked through the school gates, whispers turned into cheers. Students swarmed her, hugging her, asking questions. Her old teacher, Miss Parker, stood stunned in the doorway of room 14. "Lily," she said, blinking like she was seeing a dream. "You came back. I said I would." Inside the classroom, her desk still had her name etched in the wood, faintly. The other kids gave her space, but their eyes sparkled with curiosity. Miss Parker called for attention. "Class, today we have someone very special with us. You know her story. You've seen her on the news. But remember, she was sitting in this classroom not long ago. She was one of you." Lily stood up. "I wasn't the smartest," she said. "I wasn't the bravest. But I loved learning. I loved planes. And when the moment came, I remembered what I knew. That was enough. So learn everything. Love it. Because one day, it might matter more than you think." A hand shot up in the back. "Were you scared?" "Terrified," Lily replied. "But I didn't let fear stop me. That's the only difference between bravery and panic, what you do next." After the bell rang, her classmates didn't scatter. They stayed by her side, sharing their dreams. One wanted to be a firefighter, another a scientist. A girl said she wanted to be a pilot too. "You can," Lily told her. "I believe that." Later, as the sun dipped low, Lily walked to the playground where she used to play tag and pretend the jungle gym was an airplane wing. She looked up at the sky. A plane soared high above, its trail a thin white line across the blue. She stared at it, eyes wide, a soft smile forming on her lips. The sky didn't seem distant anymore. It felt close, personal, familiar. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another invitation, this one from an aerospace engineering program, asking her to tour their research facility. She looked at it briefly, then pocketed the phone. The future could wait. Right now, she just wanted to be 12. The wind rustled her hair. Laughter echoed behind her. The bell rang. Students ran past, some waving, others simply looking at her in awe. Lily stood still, just a girl, but also more. A symbol of what happens when an ordinary person does something extraordinary. The headlines might eventually fade. The cameras would leave. But for every passenger she saved, for every kid she inspired, for every adult reminded of the courage inside us all, Lily Chen would remain unforgettable. As the last light of the day brushed gold across the rooftops, Lily looked to the horizon with calm eyes and a quiet strength. She had flown a plane when no one else could. She had saved 238 lives. She had stood before the President of the United States. And now she stood before her peers, reminding them that heroes come in all sizes. She wasn't done dreaming. But more than that, she wasn't done inspiring. The sky had once been a dream. Now it was just the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.